Yes, I'm ready.
Okay.
Perfect. So thank you for joining this webinar. And I'd like to introduce the GigaSync to you and to introduce 9dot, that is my company. We are an Italian company based in Pisa, maybe you know the tower, and now I will show you some information. First of all, I'd like to tell you why the name of the company is 9dot. Maybe you know the 9dot puzzle. You have to connect all these points with a pen with 4 lines without taking the pen out of the paper. And to do it, you have to think outside the margins. So think outside the box. Think outside the box. Think in a different way. So I'd like to introduce the GigaSync as a to PoE, high power PoE switches, because it's fully manageable. So you have the full control through web interface, SNMP, and command line interface of every parameter of the PoE, and not only the PoE. It's multi-port. It has up to 12 PoE or terminal ports. It's also multi-mode, so you can power every kind of PoE devices with mode A, mode B, reverse polarity like Cambium does, combination of these modes, and for example, you can power different devices like 48 volts PoE devices, 24 passive PoE devices, and every kind of device you want to power through PoE, of course. It's multi-voltages because we have 3 cartridges in the unit. Each one can be powered by a different power source. So 24 volts, 48 volts, of course, minus 48 volts, just like in PoE installation of telecommunications installation. It's high power because can give up to 3 ampere per port. It means 150 watts at 50 volts. It's very high power, and also support both Cambium synchronization methods, means canopy sync and Cambium syncs. Maybe you know the Cambium PMP 450, the one that works at 29 volts, uses canopy sync, and Medusa, for example, at 57 volts uses the Cambium sync. Is a different method of synchronization of the wireless devices. So have a look at the scenario and the problems of this scenario. Power over Ethernet is a widespread method to power devices, every kind of devices, radio equipment, Wi-Fi access points, camera, IoT devices, and so on. Equipment are installed on poles or masts, are to get access to, and there is a risk of fault due to surges and short circuits. These mean long service down, intervention on site, high costs, and so on. Equipment also if you are used to install radio equipment with high power, you are used to power these devices with a lot of power, very high current PoE injector. And these PoE injector are not often made for these high current, and probably they fault during their life. So long-term, long service down, intervention on site to change the injector, a lot of costs, and so. Also, if these equipments blocks during their life, you need to power off and on again to recover. And these mean long service down, intervention on site, costs. Moreover, some devices require a lot of power and different kind of voltages. So you need different feeders, one for each single device. So a lot of feeders, a lot of cables, a lot of source of power, a very messy cabinet, usually. So producing the GigaSync, we think about 4 keywords. Control. We like to produce product that give you all the control you need to the unit. You can read every kind of parameter and set every kind of parameter just online. It's scalability. It means you can power whatever you want to device. Simplicity. The GigaSync must be simple to use. And synchronism, because if you use Cambium, you need to synchronize all the radios and maybe with just one single device. So for example, which is this scenario without GigaSync? Maybe you have a radar and you have to power Cambium with Cambium CMM4 that works at 29 volts. And you need to power this Cambium CMM4. But maybe you have a source of power that is with plus to ground or minus to ground, and you don't know. Cambium CMM4 has minus to ground. So if you install these equipment with the different grounding polarity, maybe you will have spikes or surge on devices. Also, you need to power Medusa, for example, other Cambium device with CMM5, 57 volts, and the Cambium CMM5 is a big device with only 4 ports, and you need a controller to control it. And then you will need to power other PoE devices, and usually you do this with PoE switches or injectors, but PoE switches have just a little maximum wattage. So for example, 500 watts for 12 ports means very few power on a single port, or you have to use this big PoE switch just to power only few devices, maybe at 48 volt, but again, which is the polarity of the grounding, minus or plus? And if you combine these with another kind of device, you can make some terrible errors on grounding. So you need maybe another DC-DC converter isolated just to avoid the grounding problems. And then you need surge protectors to protect all these devices, costly devices, expensive devices, I mean, to protect them against over voltages and so on. This is the scenario without GigaSync. So summarizing, a lot of injectors, DC-DC isolated converters, surge protectors, many management systems, not just one, but a lot of management systems. That means low efficiency, a lot of DC-DC converter, positive and negative to ground problems, high power only on few parts of the PoE switches, for example, and a lot of compromises all over the installation. Which is the scenario with GigaSync? Just a rudder, an injector, some source of power, but in the GigaSync, everything is fully isolated. So there's no problem about with grounding or DC-DC converting. Just plug the right source of power to the GigaSync and power your devices. Cambium or 24 volts PoE devices, Cambium at 50 volts or 48 volts PoE devices, every kind of devices, or non-PoE devices with terminal blocks. You can power the rudder or the switch or a camera or whatever you want, just with one device, one single device. So all-in-one power device. It's very reliable. It's made to avoid the problems in power systems, and it is protected against short circuit and overvoltage. And most of all, you will have only one management system to verify every parameters and send comments to the PoE system. So high efficiency, less conversions, 3 isolated inputs with ground. The ground is floating, no problem with grounding. High power on each port, 3 ampere each port, means 150 watts at 50 volts. And I think rudder is for routing and power devices is for powering devices. So you have the rudder that will make routing and the power devices for powering devices, and that's all. So let me introduce the GigaSync indeed. As you see, we have 3 cartridges and a base unit. It's only one unit, a rack unit, is designed to power every kind of PoE devices or other devices with terminal blocks. The base unit can handle up to 3 different cartridges, PoE or not PoE, is the same. It's hot swappable, so during activity you can take a cartridge out of the unit and substitute with another, or plug another one, add another one, I mean. And PoE CS cartridge means Cambium sync can generate both the canopy sync and the Cambium sync. So with just one cartridge, you can power every Cambium device with both Cambium synchronization type. The base unit grants remote control and has the user interface. User interface is with the user interface through graphic user interface, I mean web interface, SNMP, command line interface, and API, is it possible to keep under control every parameter of the unit and send command to the unit. And actions are real-time executed. If you need to power off a device, just power off the device, click and power off. Is it possible to plug 3 different voltages, one for each cartridge? So you can power with 3 different sources every kind of devices, 24 volts, 48 volts, minus 48 volts, everything you need, up to 12 output ports. And of course, Cambium sync pulse can be generated by a GPS that is integrated inside the base unit, or from external sources like UGPS or another GigaSync or CMM5, CMM4 is the same. Just one rack unit, no ventilation needed, no heat on the unit. Multi-input and output, so 3 isolated power sources, GPS, in, out, and redundancy of the GPS sync ports, because if you power Cambium devices, you absolutely don't want they lose the sync. What you can monitor through the GigaSync, the power voltages, every kind of power voltages, every single port load, so which is the consumption of the units connected to the GigaSync, the temperature of each cartridge and the base unit, and warning and alarm in real time. Through the interface, you can switch on and off each port, make power cycle, port blinking, means the installer go to the installation site and you just need to tell him plug to the port that is blinking. It's simple, but it's a great feature, I think. And the Cambium sync activation for each port. So 2 cartridge. The first cartridge is PoE, can be PoE CS with the Cambium sync or not. Of course, 2 different products. Gigabit, of course, and galvanic isolation in each port. So LAN and PoE for each of the port. As you can see on the side of the cartridge, there is a slot. There are 4 slots. Each slot is for 9-dot key. The 9-dot key is a little key that lets you decide the pin out of the PoE. So if you need to power a Mood A PoE device, just plug the right key. If you need to power a Cambium device, just plug the right key. If you need to power, I don't know, MikroTik passive PoE devices, just plug the right key, and you have the right pin out on the port, and you can change it whenever you want. High power protection, because we have a lot of surge protectors inside each port. Every line is protected. It means we insert inside this cartridge 8 diodes and 8 gas tube for each of the lines, each 8 line of the Ethernet cable, and for the 4 ports. And we can handle up to 3 amperes. In the terminal block, for connectors to power whatever you want, for example, devices with optical fiber data connection and bipolar power connection. You can monitor the consumption of these devices and also other devices. Monitor the load is very useful to understand the health status of the device connected. If the device is using too much current, means that maybe there is something wrong with it, and you can go there and verify before the problem. Every port is protected against short circuit, and every 10 seconds, this feature is also in the PoE cartridge. Every 10 seconds, it tries to power again the unit. So if there is a short circuit, of course, the power is not given to the devices, but every 10 seconds it tries again. It's protected against polarity inversion. Automatic delay recovery is what I told you about, the 10 seconds delay. And of course, high power also for this. We insert 2 CPUs on the GigaSync. Why? You can make a power reboot of the unit, an update of the unit, a software update of the unit, without losing control of the unit and without powering off the devices connected to the unit. So it's not a single point of failure, this CPU. Insert in the GigaSync, we have a database with every kind of information. The CPU manage the interface, the web interface, the command line interface, the SNMP, the API, of course. There is a log for every kind of information, warning, critical, and we insert a Wi-Fi radio inside the GigaSync, because if the installer needs to make some changes on the GigaSync, he just needs to take out of the pocket his phone, connect to the GigaSync, and send comments without taking the laptop or calling to the office. Because of this, we have a continuity in electronics, so no service interruption during software upgrade or firmware upgrade. Everything is hot swappable. Cartridge can be inserted and removed during normal operation without any kind of absence of the signal and without a detection. So you can change the cartridge and the GigaSync will operate the same. We optimize the drop voltage between the input and the output for the self-consumption reduction. So no drop means no heat on the unit and less problems, of course. And the input voltage and the load is very precise. So you can verify exactly which is the input voltage, which is the load. Every parameter is very precisely measured. Every cartridge can be, and also the main unit can be powered with 2 input terminal blocks for each cartridge. Means redundancy also in the powering. There is a little LED on the rear, so just put the in to the unit. Yes, there is a little LED. LED will show you that the power is present. It's very simple. The sync in port can power also the UGPS, the Cambium UGPS. So if you have a UGPS, you can connect it directly to the GigaSync, and you have the sync pulse on, and there is a USB console. What about the interface? In the interface, we have graphs that shows you voltages, temperature, load. It's very easy to use, very simple. We also have the command line to send comments and read status, the SNMP in read and write, and also the API. So is it possible to write your own software and to send comments and read parameters from and to the GigaSync? Which is our best customer? We have a big customer, a very big customer in Italy. It's the largest wireless internet service provider in Europe. Over 300,000 wireless subscribers installed right now, and Eolo uses double technology coverage approach with unlicensed 5 giga with Cambium and licensed with Intracom 28 gigahertz technology. By now they have 1,500 sites. Every site is provided with a GigaSync. We delivered approximately more than 2,000 GigaSyncs so far, and they are installing approximately 1,000 GigaSync per year. They were looking for an integrated PoE and sync solution to centralize the site, the power site, and optimize space. This means reducing hardware cost and intervention on site. So very, very reliable as a product. I made the PDF of this presentation, so in the PDF you will find the datasheet of the GigaSync and of the cartridge and a little show of the interface. As you can see, we have the temperature, the voltage, the load, the graph of each parameters. You can select both Cambium sync and Canopy sync, and if you just want to shut down a device, just shut down it with a toggle. It's very, very, very simple. Very simple. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.